Hello, I'm James Maguire at Maguire Family Law, and with me I've got Cecilia Goodwin, who's a specialist criminal law solicitor. In the summer, we rolled out a survey, a sample of 2,000 people looking at coercive and controlling behaviours. And we're going to have a series of videos touching on that, but different themes. And in this particular video, we're actually going to look at what that survey identified in the types of behaviours, because, I'm guilty of it, but we generally will have the phrase coercive controlling behaviours, but it is really a pattern of behaviours, and it's not always about physical violence or the threat of violence. It's about economic abuse, the financial abuse, undermining someone, gaslighting. So it's much more nuanced and sort of repeated behaviours, and can impact someone's emotional well-being. I'm just going to run through, from a family law perspective, some of the ones that I come across sort of pretty much every single day in my working life. So very quickly, and I'm reading from the sheet, but it's controlling finances. It's not allowing anyone privacy. I mean, certainly I'll come across spyware, tracking devices, motion activated sensors. Ring doorbells are a bit of a nuisance, or ring cameras where people are listening in to things. It's very easy. Again, touching on the violent side of it, but yeah, there is actual physical violence. There's the threats of violence. There's the damage of possessions, but also sort of more subtle in terms of accompanying people wherever they go, not allowing them any privacy. Threats of suicide. If you leave me, I'm going to kill myself. And, sadly, I've come across at least one or two cases in practice where that's actually happened. But the threats are often there. And checking up, where were you? What happened? I mean, sometimes people might check up on someone because they're a bit worried where they are and they haven't returned home on time. But that checking can be persistent. And it leads me sometimes to think that people sometimes are locked into a coercive and controlling relationship. And, I ask myself why that is. Sometimes it can be actually that they love the person, and there's fear of leaving that person, almost like Stockholm syndrome, that they become, and that's the problem with coercive and controlling behaviour. It's gradual, it's over time, and can make someone very vulnerable, and the victims can be women as well as men. And we know that there've been some high-profile cases in the media, which have touched on it and have raised an awareness. But people can be locked into these relationships, and it becomes a bit normalised. So, from my perspective, we're often, when we meet a new client, looking at how we can help them, because sometimes they're not aware of it. The family members might be aware of it, but they're not actually aware of it themselves. And perhaps in another video, we'll look at what steps, that party, the victim, can take. But they're kind of probably the common ones that I'll come across in my day-to-day work. But just be interested, from your criminal law perspective, which ones you see and which ones actually come before a criminal court.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really varied in terms of behaviours, because there are so many types of behaviours that can give rise to coercive and controlling behaviour. And actually, a lot of things under the the legislation in terms of the behaviours do actually have, there are actually criminal offences that do exist already. But it's interesting, and it has been interesting for me when I've been dealing with these sorts of cases, to see how, even though there is a counterpart of an actual act that deals with that behaviour, it's also mentioned within the coercive controlling behaviour legislation. But so, for example, some of the sorts of behaviours that I see are things like isolating someone from their family members or friends. You can't go out with that person. I don't like you seeing your auntie or your sister. Or, for example, telling you where you can go. And by the time you stick your head up, you don't have any family and friends around you anymore. So that's a big one that I see quite a lot. Telling somebody where they can and can't go, again, really something that's quite prevalent. Repeatedly checking to see who has phoned you. So yeah, I mean, it's all kind of around privacy, isn't it? Someone should be allowed to have their own privacy, call who they want, text who they want. But you find this a lot in this sort of area of law.
Do you come across any spyware like I do?
Yeah, tracking devices on cars usually, and things like, at the home, making sure someone remains in the home, i.e. by having CCTV cameras in the home. And a lot of that is, it's for your safety. We're doing it to safeguard the family and the property and you. But then sometimes it's being used for other sort of nefarious purposes, such as controlling. Then the other thing I see quite a lot is monitoring somebody online. So, for example, where you have someone comments, for example, on social media. So you are going into their social media accounts, or you're watching who they're commenting, whose posts they're commenting, whose likes, who they're giving likes to. That again, unfortunately, can fall foul of the law. Then we also have things like taking away, destroying your form and mode of communication, like taking away your mobile phone, tablet, laptop, whichever means you use to communicate with the outside world. If that's taken away, you can't. Again, controlling. And then monitoring your time. Someone might say, I'm just going to the gym. Oh, you haven't come back. Where have you been? That sort of thing. And yeah, the other thing is violence, but not violence towards the complainant, but violence in the vicinity of the complainant. So, for example, in the home setting, punching a wall, kicking a TV, and, causing criminal damage to a place that usually should be a safe haven for the other person as well. That is actually, I think that could be seen as coercive control.
Yeah. And certainly it appears to me there's a lot of crossover in these behaviours in our two different types of work. And in a previous video, I certainly mentioned perhaps the need for the courts to have more of an appetite, the family courts, to protect people and not give the perpetrator the benefit of the doubt sometimes. And that can delay the proceedings, can increase the cost. But the pressure on the person, the victim, and thinking, well, I might give up. And in another video, I think we'll touch on what steps people can actually do, either in reporting matters to the police or through the family court, for example, an injunction order to try and protect them. But for now, Cecilia, I'd just like to thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, James.